Daily Mirror, and I'd like to thank you for inviting me here today. I'm genuinely very honoured to help with this launch, or relaunch of this organisation. And to be honest, it's not people like Jason and me sitting in our office in London who matter. It's the people like you guys here and your supporters. You're the people on the ground who make a difference to people's lives, and that's what's really important here. My links with Harlow go back a long way. While I was born in Shearing, and I brought up in Hatfield Heath, it was here in Harlow that I learnt to swim. I had my first job here, and I Les said was paying tribute to Tesco's for paying for that drink and food there. My first job was in Tesco's in 1982 at Harvey Centre when it was opened as a shelf stacker, and that's where I started out in Harlow. I learned how to be a reporter in Harlow, and the most important thing that I learned in Harlow was how to drink beer. It was in the hair, maybe. That's a few other ones. My family's got strong links with Harlow. My mum is chair of the Playhouse supporters group and is secretary of the Harlow Playhouse Charitable Trust. And my dad, before his death last year, was chair of Raised Roof, which I'm sure, as many of you know, is one of the most amazing charities I've ever heard of. It's fantastic. And I know for a fact that many people connected with Raised Roof have used your services over the years to help them get the right things that they're entitled to. And my journalism career started here with work experience at the Harlow Gazette, which are obviously no longer here. I completed the one-year NCTJ course at Harlow Technical College, which was just over there in those days. I'm sure many of you will remember. In 82-83, and without getting too political, as the ugly years of Margaret Thatcher gathered pace. It was there that I learned the core values of socially responsible journalism under such wise and experienced heads as Mag Barrett's husband, Joe, who I'd like to pay tribute to publicly today for the first time. Mike Danvers was also one of my lecturers there. I'd like to pay tribute to Mike as well. So here I am, 30 years on, a local lad who has made its chief reporter of the Daily Mirror. And I could not be prouder. I didn't go to university. The only education I had here was Harlow Technical College. The Mirror, we were the only national newspaper at the last election to tell the readers, urge the readers to vote Labour. Even The Guardian told its readers to vote Lib Dems. And in my humble opinion, look at the mess we've got ourselves into. Working for the Daily Mirror is an utter honour and privilege, representing the very people your organisation helps on a daily basis, helping the disadvantaged and disenfranchised in society, providing them with a voice and a platform for their problems and issues to be heard. Although, to be fair, when my family and friends ask me about my 30 years in journalism, they are not really interested about my work helping the poor, my undercover work, the Ku Klux Klan, interviewing Bill Clinton, 9/11, Lockerbie, Columbine. They only ever ask me about one thing. It's the time I came ninth in the World Hot Dog Eating Championship. And I threw up live on Japanese TV. I would like to pay tribute to all those here who have been involved in getting this organisation back up and running again. It is an extraordinary achievement, and given the unbelievable amount of political infighting that has taken place, it must have caused strain to numerous relationships and friendships. The author and journalist Nicholas Tomlin, who died in 1973, covering the Yom Kippur War, once used the following quote to describe newspaper reporters. He said, "The only qualities essential for real success in journalism are rat-like cunning, a plausible manner, and a little literary ability." Well, without getting too political, and given the way the Tories have taken a sledgehammer to the benefit system, perhaps we should all, including the Harlow Advice Centre, play their own game and have a plausible manner, a little literary ability, and a rat-like cunning to tackle the relevant authorities to ensure that people of Harlow and the people of this country get what they are entitled to. So to you all assembled here, you are the heartbeat of Harlow and its very soul. And I would personally like to thank you so much for what you've done for the people of this town. I wish you all the very best for the future and for your new organisation. Thank you.
Welcome to everyone here this evening. Actually, we've got that video of Andy in the hot dog eating. It's recorded live on Japanese television.
He has as well.
I wish we had it. It's wonderful to be here. And it's when Maggie Barrett contacted me and asked me to speak this evening, I was aware of the campaign that you've been fighting. Ron Bill, who I can see in the audience, who writes to me from time to time from Statesman, and told me about what was happening. Maggie had told me also about your fight. So I had to be here this evening. I'm very honoured to be here at is essentially a relaunch. I can go better than Andy, actually. I was born in Harlow. I was educated in Harlow. Until the age of 18. We left the town in the early 80s. I can see Moira Jones here this evening too. I also spent some time at Harlow College, so it's great to see some familiar faces. I was a little bit of a dilettante when I was at the college, Moira. I wasn't really studying that hard. I was sort of drifting around. Spending more time sort of at parties, dyeing my hair and going to nightclubs and being a good student. And it was only in retrospect, after I left the town, that I began to understand what the town had offered me, actually. If you think back to, my parents were from the East End of London. They moved out from the East End into the new town, housing, lavatories inside the houses, a semi-rural environment, houses with gardens, wonderful infrastructure to support the town. We all know this, the network of cycle tracks, this great library, the swimming pool, the recreational sports leagues from which Glen Hoddle emerged, the play schemes, the playhouse, the college, and so I could go on. So I always see myself very much as a product of that period, what one might call the great social democratic experiment that took place at the time of the Attlee government, 1945, the creation of the welfare state, the creation of the National Health Service, benefits, welfare, opportunities, investment in schools, and I'm very much a product of that period, as is the town. Of course, since '79 and the arrival of Thatcherism, we've seen a great rolling back of the post-war consensus, the social democratic dream, that model of how society should be organised. Sue, in her excellent presentation, gave us the data on inequality. It's a huge problem, rising inequality, immense poverty. You mentioned unemployment, but actually the key issue is underemployment. There are many people who are in work, but aren't paid the wages that they ought to be paid. They want to work 4 days or 5 days a week, can only work 3, they're part-time. So that's the significant issue there, is what they call underemployment. Real wages have been flat, and that trend began before the financial crisis. Okay, we've been through a cataclysmic financial crisis, the worst since the Great Depression of the 1930s. But if you think, real wages were flat from about 2005. In other words, they're rising less than inflation. So year on year, people are getting pay cuts in real terms. But that started before financial crisis. One thing I think is an absolute scandal as well is that the super rich have somehow moved outside of taxation. They operate in this kind of global space. So capital money is so mobile at a time of globalization. What isn't mobile, though, is things like property, land, what you might call static assets. So there must surely be a move towards taxing wealth as well as income. You know, we all pay a lot of income tax. We all pay a lot of taxes with VAT, national insurance, road taxes. And it's a very highly taxed country. But somehow the very rich have moved themselves outside of taxation. And if Ed Miliband wins power in 2015, and there's no guarantee that he will, that's something I think he ought to address. It's very poignant for me to be here at this library because after my period when I was drifting, not studying very carefully, I did eventually go to university and I graduated in 1989. But I didn't have a job straight away, and I was living in Sawbridge at the time. And actually I used to come to this library quite a lot. Just round the corner at the back used to be the magazine rack, where I found the New Statesman, the Spectator, which is the right-wing equivalent of the New Statesman, and many other interesting magazines, and I used to borrow music from here. So I spent a lot of time reading, thinking about the kind of journalist I wanted to be. I'm a great admirer of Andy Lyons, not least because of his phenomenal drinking potential. But I'm not a brave reporter in the way that Andy is. I'd be more of an essayist, a reviewer, an editor. I'm not on the front line as Andy has been. but it was coming to this library, reading the Statesman, discovering the Statesman, reading the Spectator. Actually, back then, I actually found the Spectator a better read, which was interesting. It's not now, by the way. I hate to add. But it helped, so this library helped form me and the kind of journalist that I became. And many years later, 2009, I wrote a little memoir. Sort of football, politics, a little bit about my dad, who was a Harlow man. And it was while I was writing the book, particularly the chapter on Harlow, that I really began to think how fortunate I'd been to have grown up in this town because of the astonishing infrastructure of support that it had. My parents weren't well off, but they were good parents because they cared about the right things. So we didn't have a lot of money. There were 3 children, but the town gave me everything I needed: sports, recreation, theatre, learning. It was a fantastic time to be here. That's why it's so painful to see some of that rolled back, cut, and attacked, and devastated. And a centre such as this, at a time such as this, a time of poverty, underemployment and unemployment, food banks, who would have thought we'd have one of the boom areas of England, the food banks. This is the kind of centre that needed more perhaps than it's ever been, not least because of the assault on the welfare state that we have witnessed. So it's wonderful, sir, that you fought your battle. Wonderful, all of you, that you came together to mobilise, indeed took on a Labour Council, disgraceful Labour Council, I hear, in many ways. Not just the Tory Council, Labour Council were culpable. You took them on and you won a battle. And that's quite something. Do you remember when David Cameron was running to become Prime Minister? 2007, 8, 9, and there was all of this branding. He wanted to detoxify the Conservative Party. Remember the big society? Cameroon. The idea of the big society was that, and in some ways there was a noble idea. It was a space between the state and the market where intermediate organisations could flourish. They used the phrase, Edmund Burke's phrase, the little platoons. Those intermediate organisations were meant to be organisations such as yours, trade unions, friendly societies, and so on and so forth. But of course, it was rhetoric. What they were preparing us for was a huge cuts, a huge attack on the state, a huge rolling back of many of the services that the state provides, and they quickly dropped the big society. Excuse me. My preference is a good society, and I think that's what you've created here, where a group of people come together, they energise, they organise, and they achieve something, in spite of what is thrown at them. So it's great to be here, actually, Andy, tonight, because it's a good story. Andy's looking extremely tanned. He's just come back from Brazil, when he was covering the World Cup in the Mirror. And I was watching it on television, enviously. But it's great to be here, and I know Andy would have come back early from Brazil. I congratulate you on what you've achieved. Good that we've all got together here this evening. I'm very happy, I think, Chairman, to take some questions if anyone wants to ask any. While I'm here, I'm going to plug the New Statesman. We celebrate